Thank you, Chair. We got apologies from Councillor Blackman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the first item on the agenda is a confirmation of minutes. Has anybody seen any problems with the minutes? All happy with them? Is that okay? Yeah, do you need a hand? No other questions about the minutes? No, thank you. Can we have a show of hands to say you're happy, please? Sorry, my screen's locked. So we're on to declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Thank you. I assume no? Thank you. There's no items of requiring urgent attention that I know of, and there's no public here that I'm aware of. So we'll shortly move on to the leisure contract, item 6 on the agenda, but just to let you know, we're going to swap the Community Safety Partnership and Devon Building Control to give Mandy time to get back again. So we'll move on to the leisure contract. John, are you happy to introduce this?
Afternoon, members. In case you don't, because I know some of you, not all of you, so I'm John Parkinson, so I'm the Council's Senior Leisure Officer. So obviously over a period of time I have presented the leisure report, and obviously with colleagues from Fusion have given their annual presentation. I'll hand over to Fusion shortly. My cover report is literally as it is. It's just setting out some background to the leisure contract with Fusion. We are in now year 7 of a 25-year contract. And I've given some national context as well, as you'll see in the background, 2.1. And it's actually interesting because as I was putting this report together and Rob was doing the presentation, we both actually made very good reference to recent reports that have come out from Sport England. So you'll see in paragraph 2.2, the reference to the Sport England report just come out last month on the cost of living aspect and the impact that has had on the leisure industry nationally. And you'll see from Fusion's presentation how that impacts operations locally as well. So it has had a significant impact in how leisure business is managing their position. Also, another useful national benchmark is through what's termed the Moving Communities Service. So that's been used as very much from Sport England, particularly for gathering, data on participation, on customer satisfaction, on usage, particularly on utility usage. That's been running for the past 3 years, and that data that again all the leisure operators input into Fusion as well, into securing where we can from national government some funding. That was from post-COVID recovery and now through to a swimming pool support fund. So it's that data that is quite crucial, that gives the national sort of data as to what is happening nationally, but also reflecting locally. The other thing I just want to bring reference to is you'll see on 3.3, so I've given some background information locally for our leisure centres, obviously specifically here at Meadowlands and at Parklands, as to where we stand with leisure centre memberships and swim usage from, it's taken from December 2023 and then going back, as it were, to pre-COVID, and as times were probably at their busiest within our centres to 2019. So there's a sort of comparison as to how business is now to how business was before. And to be fair, Business has recovered well across the two sites, very well in particularly on the wet side, and again that's reflected from some of the national figures as well. And then lastly, the other thing obviously is thank you as well to the task and finish group that we had. Obviously we had good site visits, we had a good chat, I know, through with when Rob was there and with the centre managers. So thank you for those members that are supported and the meetings you've had. That's been very beneficial, and hopefully that gives you an insight, and obviously we can take further questions and answers as we go through. So that's all I want to say at the moment, and I'll hand over to Rob here. You want to introduce yourself, Simon, for our Fusion presentation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm the General Manager down in Meadowlands, Thamestown.
I'm Rob Taylor. I'm the Regional Manager for the South West, so I manage Devon, Somerset and Bath. And I've been involved in the contract here since 2016 when it started. So thanks for the quick intro, John. A bit longer than I thought. The actual presentation itself, hopefully you've all been able to see, it would take me about an hour and a half to walk through totally, so I'm just going to pick on highlights, but I'm happy to take questions as we go, or I'll wait until the end and answer the questions in the end. But I made a bit of a boo-boo in South Hams and started flicking between slides, and it didn't quite work, so I'll stick to the slides in the order if that's okay. Well, John's just reminded me we've got Claire Beale, our Sports and Development Manager, online, and she'll pick up those slides as we move through. Thanks, John. So if we can move to the first slide from Sport England. I actually thought it was quite important to paint a national picture of where leisure is. I think some of us are of the understanding that post-COVID, we all saw everyone running around and on their bikes, and we thought that the situation was better than what it perhaps is. And the leisure industry is struggling because participation levels aren't where they should be. So I think we all thought we were going to come out of COVID a much fitter nation, and the actual truth is that's not the position that we're in. So it's taken a bit longer to recover in terms of participation levels, not just in Parklands and Midlands, but that's the same picture nationally. And in fact, our leisure centres are doing slightly better than the national recovery rate, which is a good thing, and we're really pleased about that, aren't we? The Sport England data shows that hirers and clubs are struggling. Schools are struggling with their budgets, so they haven't got the funds to be able to hire the centres in the same way that you used to, and it's forcing us to look at leisure provision in a different way. And so we've got a traditional dual use agreement at Parklands in Oakhampton, and we're going to need to look at that and work out whether that agreement works for the school as well as us. And if there are opportunities within that agreement to be able to move in a different way and think about things in a different light going forward. And that's all because of the participation levels not recovering to where we were post-COVID. Some interesting facts in there and on the next slide, but if we can move through those. Come on to the next slide. And then I thought it was important to give a Fusion, the Fusion overview, please. So Fusion have moved their accountancy period. We've struggled in the past to report on calendar year when we're reporting to councils who are working to local authority financial year. And we've finally taken the decision to extend it by 3 months, have a 15-month year or accountancy period, and then move into local authority reporting schemes. And that's been a frustration for John and I. Every time we meet, we forget which period we're reporting on and what month's an extra month. This will make life for us on a national level much easier. And there's no other reason behind that. It's just delayed the Fusion accounts. In terms of our strategy moving forward, we are in negotiation with the council. There has been a report presented to your executive, and that's as much as I'll say about that. That report has gone forward, and that's been on the table for consideration. And I think we'll move on at that point. So some of the highlights: we've worked with yourselves, and we really appreciate this, for a children in care scheme, and the council are funding that, and that's arisen from yourselves. And I think that's a really good project that we've worked on, and it came off the back of the Ukrainian project back in 2022 as well. So it just shows we're beginning to work together more closely on wider projects. And there's a couple of things in the pipeline that we'll come to at the end of the presentation that I just want to make councillors aware of. We've launched our cafes, and I'm pleased to say the Parklands Cafe opened successfully, and as Simon will tell me off for saying, it's probably got a better cup of coffee in Oakhampton than Tavistock. I'll leave that for you to debate amongst yourselves. That's been a real success. What the cafes do, it sounds very simple to launch a cafe in a leisure centre, but it turns a leisure centre into a community space. And it brings people in from the 2 parks that we've got next door to our leisure centres into the building, and it makes those spaces a safe space that people can enjoy, not just for their health and well-being, but for their mental health as well. And that's a real bonus for us. We're really pleased about that. And we really think we've got 2 excellent cafe providers in place. So we're really pleased. And some of you will no doubt know the 2 providers that we're talking about already. Specifically at Meadowlands, we've seen the Wet and Wild sessions return in the holiday periods, and we've just come up from the centre now, and there's 100 people in those swimming sessions as we left. And it's interesting to sit in the cafe that there were families from Liverpool and Wales and London, and not necessarily our local community users. So that's a really interesting demographic for us to think about. So move on. There are the participation numbers. There's a year-on-year comparison. Parkland's doing particularly well, and it looks as if Meadowlands is struggling. But contextually, there's a 4-week closure in the Meadowlands figures when the roof over the swimming pool caused us some structural problems, and we had to address that. So there's 4 weeks of data missing there, which means overall, we're really pleased at the way the participation has gone in 2023. 2024 has started really positively as well, with some record-breaking numbers in the centre already. So we're really looking forward for a recovery month in 2024. It's really strong, and we should be really pleased about that. Particularly, again, the cafes have had a really positive influence on bringing people in. They are using their social media outlets, their digital outlets to bring people into the centre that perhaps wouldn't have been in since the COVID shutdown. That's really good, really positive. We can move to the next. Net Promoter Score. So to remind colleagues, Net Promoter Score is a brutal way of researching customer satisfaction. So you are asked to give a score out of 10. If you score a 9 or a 10, you are a promoter. If you score 7 or 8, you are passive. And if you score 6 or below, you are considered to be a detractor. So if you think to yourself, even if you've had a good time and you rated the service an 8, that is considered to be a non-positive response in this process. So it's pretty tough. It's a really good tool. Simon and I talk about it all the time. It's great to see the staff feedback really positive. And it's totally expected to see the changing rooms and facilities red blocks there that we should identify. That has never been any different in the 35 years that I've been in leisure, but it doesn't mean we're complacent about the issues. So there are some real issues, and particularly our wet side change is an area of focus. So today, for instance, we've got 100 people coming in from one session and 100 people leaving from another session. That's a real pinch point in terms of can we get enough people in the change rooms to clean them quickly so that the transfer is acceptable. And those are the sort of challenges we're working with Simon on his staffing levels, and whether or not we need specific cleaners or we can get our lifeguard teams to clean up quickly enough in between. But we'll focus on those. We won't take a complacent approach. That's an important graph for us. So if you could move on. Yeah, some great numbers again on the membership side of things. I think it's fair to say we initially, when we came back out of COVID, it was a slightly slower response than we would have liked, and we've still got room for growth. Both Parklands and Meadowlands moving into 2024 have seen a real uplift in membership numbers again. So we'd be anticipating a really strong year in 2024. As the service grows, you'll see the membership growing because we can offer bespoke services to the people that we're listening to in our Meet the Manager sessions. That's really important. You can't grow membership without sitting down and talking to the people that are both coming and the people that aren't coming. It's really important. That's how we're going to provide you with the community leisure centres that you really want. As John alluded to, the swimming lessons are also doing particularly well. They were the largest, or the quickest, recovery group in the country. Swimming lessons are operating at about 160% of where they were before COVID. So that's been a real success. That's huge, and that's still growing in the right direction. But it does throw up one of the challenges we've got, which is recruitment. So recruitment in leisure has been particularly difficult, and we've struggled to recruit lifeguards, swimming instructors, and in fact group exercise instructors as well. And that's a real challenge for us, and we need to put that to bed in 2024 really. So if we move on. Little bit about maintenance and repairs. I think it's always worthwhile explaining how much we spend on that side of things. It's not everyone's bag, so I won't dwell too long, but I think it's good to see that we've got a replacement strategy for LED lighting, and we're considering the energy usage, which has increased by 300% for us. So all of a sudden that shines a light on that area of the business that might have been overlooked in the past. But I think we need to explain that how important that is, and that our first port of call will be, if we're replacing lights, it will be to put the LEDs in. If we're thinking about energy recovery, we talk about pool covers. If we talk about plant rooms, we talk about lagging pipes that have been there for 25 years, losing heat. We've got to address those issues. So I believe the next slide is sport and community, and I'll bring in Claire at that point.
Hello, thank you, Rob. Yes, Claire Bill with Sports and Community Development across the Devon contract. So the main part of the Sports and Community Development in West Devon is in partnership with OCRA, the Oakhampton Community Recreation Association, working closely with Ian Blythe, the manager there. We have an SLA that we review on a yearly basis with OCRA, and it covers a lot of the work that they do, namely sort of their weekly term time activity at Parklands and at their pavilion. And we're also planning with them to see how we can sort of stretch that across to Tavistock as well, and see where we can put term time activity in and holiday activity in at Meadowlands. They do a lot of work across the schools, across the whole of West Devon, and that's included in the partnership and the work that we would do with them, as well as their holiday programme. And they've been delivering quite a lot of HAF activities, which is the Holiday Activities and Food Scheme, which is for those on free school meals, which is a really important part of their work, as well as events across the fitness festivals that they deliver. And move on to the next slide, please. And then these are just some of the programmes that are just sort of contract wide, so they operate across the whole of the contract. The exercise referral scheme and cardiac rehabilitation, really strong programme, and particularly strong in West Devon. We've had, I think those figures there give you the total figures, but certainly for West Devon, Parklands last year had 77 referrals and Meadowlands had 106. So really strong numbers for West Devon. And we are piloting a programme this year with the PCN and the Oakhampton Medical Practice to look at a community-based programme with a class happening in the college, so a non-gym-based session to see how that would work against the traditional gym-based exercise referral programme. We run the Sporting Academy, which was the old, you may have been aware of the FRAN scheme, which is for talented athletes across the district to be able to get free access to the leisure centres to support their training. The young lad in the picture there is an athlete that we have in athletics, Nicholas. He's second in the UK in under 17 in 400 metre hurdles, and that was at one of his recent competitions. But we've got a wide range of athletes on that programme. And we've been also supporting some SEN swimming lessons, that's special educational needs and disabilities, for them to be able to subsidise lessons across the centres. That's been really strong, probably the strongest actually at Meadowlands. I've delivered a number of those lessons there, and that continues, as well as partnerships we've been making with the libraries. And a new project I think just listed there with the funding is we've been successful with a grant from Parkinson's, and we'll be rolling that out in 2024, looking at some seated exercise, and we'll be having a new seated exercise class going into Meadowlands. We've already got some seated exercise in Parklands, so we'll be extending that programme. I think that's everything from me. Thank you.
Bit of marketing and social media information there. I'm not going to get into that, I don't think. I think we've recently tried some outreach, specific outreach into local communities. We'll continue to do that this year. I think we're getting to the position where we're not going to go down the blanket marketing route too much. We're going to go for specific targeted demographic groups, and I think we've had more success with that. So we can engage with them directly, find out what they want from us, and then be able to provide that and look at the smaller groups of sort of 10s and 20s rather than blanket market everyone and just get ignored. So I think that's a shift change for us, and that is a little bit more intelligent, and that's where I need to use the likes of Simon rather than myself, because he's far more intelligent about the local area than I am. But our marketing approach has been a little bit too generic for my liking, and I think being more bespoke to our communities is a much better approach, so I'm really pleased with that. It comes from a change in a marketing director at the top, sending that through as the approach that we should be taking. It's really good move. So if we move, yeah, this is a really, this is something I'm really pleased about, actually. The learning and development schemes in the Southwest have been the strongest within Fusion, and that means that we're taking our learners, and Simon's one of them, on the level 7 scheme. So we're taking them from internally being promoted or recruited into the centres, and then taking them on a degree equivalent level 5, or a master's degree level 7 qualification, and taking them through their development as people. That's led us to have 2 really strong general managers in our centres, but also to have really strong support teams around them as well. It's helped with our recruitment. It's certainly motivated these guys. It's not easy to go through those learning courses while you're holding down a full-time job and a young family, as Simon is. So I'm really pleased about that, and that is a culture that we're building in the Southwest, and we're getting known for that in Fusion nationally, aren't we? It's really strong. Okay. Oh, some current challenges. So it's not all rosy. We've talked about the national context. We've talked about what we're facing. Our conversations with our clubs are becoming much more difficult. Our hirers can't afford to hire the space that they were used to. They're having to consolidate. That's difficult. They can't pass on charges. So we're looking at a national minimum wage increase of 12%. John would fall off his chair if I proposed price increases of 12% on the front door. So we're not able to do that. So, and that's why we've got to think in different ways about how we keep the number of people coming through the door, but also pay the bills as they come in as well. So it's important. The utility costs have increased by 300%, and that's a huge hurdle to overcome for us. Recruitment's been a problem. I'm sure you've all at times seen that we've needed to close pools or sessions because we haven't got the staff to be able to run sessions. It's not something we want to do. There's no business model on Fusion's side that says closing a pool is more effective than keeping it open. That's just simply not true, because you've got the overheads there, whether it's open or whether it's closed. So it's better for us to keep running those sessions. The car parking fees is an interesting one. I've brought that up because for a long time I've felt really passionately that whilst we can offer a swim for £5, if you then have to pay £3 to park outside the leisure centre, it's actually an £8 swim and not a £5 swim. And I'm not looking for a discussion with the council to remove the income that you're getting for parking fees, but I'm looking for an intelligent conversation where we can perhaps come up with a scheme where we can get more people coming through the door, you retain your fees, but we increase participation in our leisure centres, which is our health and well-being agenda. If we're genuine about that, we've got to look at those parking fees as a hurdle for people coming in through the door. We can't ignore it, because we're hearing that from our customers. You can't come in for an £8 swim, it's just not feasible. It's not the way it should work. So that will be an interesting conversation this year, as will the agreement that we've got at Oakhampton with the school. That'll be an interesting conversation. And again, I'm sure there's a really intelligent solution to allow the school to benefit from more access to the facilities and perhaps pay less, but also free up some time that we can use as well for our customers coming through the door. And I'm really excited about that. Just need to look at things in a different way. We'll be seeing some growth on the exercise referral schemes. Claire's alluded to it already, but we're really excited about how that's going to move forward. And it's fair to say, and Simon knows this more than anyone else, we have got ageing plant rooms, and we do need to think about how we approach that strategically in terms of piecemeal replacement. Because we're getting to the age where we need to look at that sensibly. Can't afford the close downs, but we've got a plant that's 30, 40 years old, and we need to deal with that. But we'll do that. We'll overcome that problem. That just takes a bit of planning. So some of the things we're looking forward to. Well, you know, in summary, I think we're in a really good place. I think both Oakhampton and Tavistock are performing really well. We've got good teams in place. We've got services and programs that are growing. We are pending some news from the Swimming Pool Support Fund. Perhaps you can tell from my face it'll be good news, which I'm not allowed to say because Sport England have got us under a marketing embargo. But I'm reasonably confident. The cafe at Parklands has opened successfully, and we've obviously got our cafe provider in Medlands that's coming up to their year anniversary. We've got in place our Meet the Manager sessions now. They're held once a month. They are out there for everyone to see. And as councillors, you should direct your constituents to come to those Meet the Manager sessions and raise their concerns directly with our managers. It's how we're going to improve our service for you. So don't take all the flack. Don't feel the need that you need to come through John. Please do if you want to. But also come to the Meet the Manager sessions and we'll learn what they want on their programmes and services, and then we can provide it. That's how we're going to be successful together. We ought to mention the solar panel investment, which is part of the business proposal that is going to exec, as is, it's the solar panel investment here, which will address the decarbonisation issue in both the centres. And then we're looking forward to the to working more closely with the Promise School, which we haven't set up our formal agreement with yet, but we will do moving forward. And of course, the last item on the list will be an affordable price increase in April. I'd love to be able to say we can avoid a price increase. We can't. National minimum wage 12%, utilities 300%, supplier costs going up. We can't avoid a price increase. What we can do is make it as affordable as possible. That's the challenge that John and I have got to work on, so we come up with a reasonable agreement. And that's it. So, Chair, I'd like to field the questions, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd just like to say thank you for welcoming us into the leisure centres and letting us speak to the staff. They didn't seem to be briefed beforehand, so that was really helpful. Thank you very much. I think you've answered quite a few questions, but we'll see if we've got some left for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting us to the two facilities at that time. That was very impressive. I think what came over to me most of all was the enthusiasm and creativity of the staff and management there. And I think that was very, very nice to see. I've never been to Meadowlands before, and that was quite an eye-opener. I mean, it's slightly different to Parklands, obviously, because it was a bit dark and dingy at the time, and the cafe hadn't opened at that point. We realised that the cafe at Meadowland was what was making it sparkle, I think, at that time. So impressed with the staff. I can understand the problems you're having with getting staff. Something's happening everywhere. It's not just leisure centres. I just have one question. Basically, was the decarbonisation plan. Obviously, that's a big thing at the moment. With the global warming. I mean, what state is that plan at now, and what's the scheduling for that plan for both facilities?
Well, the exec have got the business plan from Fusion. That's the first decision that needs to be made. Once that's made, then we can move into our solar panel provision. The operator's ready to go. We're in regular communication with them. We've got a plan in place. As soon as we get an agreement, then we can move to installation, which it's reasonable to think this year. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm looking at Mr. Powell at the back of the room here. My understanding is also, in terms of further decarbonisation, is we were successful in securing some government funding to look at decarbonising our leisure centres even further. So effectively, the heat pumps for effectively the swimming pools and the like. So we got that first bit of funding to secure the work undertaken to do the feasibility studies. Once those feasibility studies are complete, it will make us eligible to then bid for further government funding to actually decarbonise further. So that's where we're up to in that process. Is that right, Mr. Powell? Thank you. He's nodding for those members who can't see.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, and really enjoyed the meeting that we had in Parklands, and thank you for that. And I think you're doing a great job, you and the managers, and it must be really difficult with the cost of living and fuel expenses and everything. But I would like to see Parklands repainted. It's quite dingy. So with your, your points 1 to 10, I would give Parklands a 7 right now. Repainted, I give it a 9. It really would make a huge difference. I think, when you go into a place and it just feels grim, it's very off-putting. You want to go in and feel, oh yes, this is where I want to be, and it'll, people will come back again and again. That's what I.
Okay, thank you for that. It's good to get real feedback. It's disappointing to hear it, but it's good to get the feedback. But we'll work on that. We'll put a plan in place to get that done, internally and externally. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you. I have been coming to Meadowlands for 10 years because my children have just graduated from that swim school. And what I would say is congratulations on Meadowlands. It's really transformed in the time that I've been there. And I think it really shows. There are 2 questions I had. One was, the one thing that continues to sort of let the space down, I think, is the domed window over the pool. It's a lovely idea, and with it clean and no mold on it and things, it will really make what you've done shine. Is that in the cards anytime soon?
Yeah, that's booked in for March for the contractors to actually finish the whole clean top and the canopy as you walk in.
Fantastic. Well, I think it will really help. And I also noted that on social media today, you had your Wet and Wild sessions advertised for this week during the half term. So, and I think that was really effective post. So well done on that. The only other question I had was actually to do with the car parking. Obviously, having been a user, I've been there for the sessions. And actually, I think our car parking is rather affordable. It's £1.30 for an hour. The problem is that a swim session plus changing room with a small child can be quite difficult to manage within that hour, even though it should work. And I'm just wondering if there's another solution, something like a discount incentive that would just kind of bring that price down a little bit. If you're in the swim school, for instance, that maybe Fusion could offer that would make it for me as a mum, I'm only paying that £1, for instance.
A discount off the car parking, great. Is that what?
I was thinking more of if I'm going to join your swim school, you know, and I have to be there for an hour, you could offer me a 30 pence back on my car parking and I would be more involved.
I certainly think, Councillor, there's a meet in the middle position there. We'd be looking at a solution like that. We're certainly willing to meet in the middle if there's a compromise to be had. But the discussion is open, yeah.
Yeah, and the other option that I've thought about, and this is for council to consider, I think, at a different location and time, is that the timings of the car parking there are 1 hour and 2 hours. So if you are in the swim school, you have to pay for 2 hours if you want to make sure you don't get a ticket. And I think that's something that the council has control over, probably. So I will be voicing my opinion there.
Or conversely, the swimming lessons could be extended to an hour and a half. Just in case you thought you were getting it all easy, Rob.
We would have been able to clean the dome quicker as well, but the contractor was a bit cheeky on price. So we've had to push back a bit harder than we thought we would have to, but we've had the contractor lined up. They were being a bit naughty with their pricing, so it's unfortunately taken us a bit longer to get them into the centre. But we've negotiated it now, so it will be done, and it will be transformational there, I think. Really good.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a recent report that I read, there were issues reported regarding repairs to equipment taking too long. Is this still the case? And if so, what are you doing about it, please?
No, it's improved massively in the last quarter, I would say. There was a struggle getting equipment repaired, more on getting the contractors and the suppliers in to get equipment repaired. But that seems to have improved in the last quarter quite substantially, and there's not really any equipment out of place now.
Change in supplier. So we were getting our repairs through Life Fitness directly, who are an Italian-based company, and getting parts from Italy, and that was causing us the delays. We've switched supplier now to Service Sport, who are more locally based and seem much more effective. So I think we've resolved it.
And a second question. There's been a report that staffing of reception at Parklands has been slow. Can this be rectified, please?
Slow in their reaction time, or slow in us being able to recruit a replacement?
In their reaction time, I think.
I'll pick that up directly, yeah. I wasn't aware of that. I believe now that they're fully staffed and they should be reactive. So I will pick that up directly.
Elliott.
So thank you for such an interesting presentation, and I was really pleased to hear about the sort of marketing and social media, and that you're not just doing blanket marketing but trying to target different groups. So 2 questions related to that. So one is about sort of geographical specificity and how much you have information on the geographical reach of the 2 different facilities. And I live quite in Oakhampton, but not in Oakhampton, so I'm the councillor for Chagford. So I suppose I'm sort of interested in how much you try and reach out to those sort of more rural areas, so the geography of it. And then the sort of second question about marketing is, it's great to hear about the cafes, and I completely agree with you as that's a good way of pulling people in and making it a community space. But are there other things that you've got sort of intelligence about as people's sort of lifestyles and tastes change that you're thinking about incorporating into the offer that will make it more appealing to get people in the door, and then they might do some other things?
Yeah, in terms of intelligence, we've got quite a bit on the people actually coming into the centre at the moment, so we can track and we can do our spiral graphs of where people are living and concentrate on the postcodes and what they're likely to be attracted to. It's always the more difficult case, isn't it, of who we're not attracting and why we're not attracting them. And that's the piece of work that's going to be a little bit more difficult to conduct, because we need to go out into communities and speak to people that aren't coming in. But if you ask someone, will you talk to us about why you don't go somewhere, it's actually quite a difficult conversation. You're unlikely to get successful doing that. So that's going to be a little bit harder. And I'm going to look at Claire on the screen and say, look, Claire and her team do a great job of outreach and getting out into the schools and the local village halls and asking them what they would like to see us doing. But it's a much slower process to get to that point. John?
I think, yeah, so I know the Fusion have done membership catchment area analysis, so that gives the graphs and the spiral as to how far people are going, or whether there are any sort of areas that our members aren't coming in from, so there could be, through Claire's, the outreach work targeting that. But I think on getting, the non-users, that's where we need to work closer with some of our health partnerships, the doctors, the local primary care networks, where we know people have a challenge actually just, walking through into a leisure centre and finding out what activities. And I think better engagement and working with our health colleagues, that is a big challenge. Rob mentioned how he's a regional manager. He operates centres in Somerset and Mendip. They actually have, and we have an exercise referral scheme here. That exercise referral scheme here is totally funded by Fusion. We don't get any money from any health partnership. Somerset and elsewhere, that's not the case. There's money coming in from health partnerships to help subsidise exercise referrals, because often if you ask people what the barrier is, it'll be cost or time or travel too. So if we can get that price barrier down, that'll be a big way of engaging with more people who wouldn't. So I think we can work with, as you say, particular partnerships groups, and the health being the biggest one, to attract more people who wouldn't ordinarily come in. So I think as a council we need to work how we can, contacts, how we can make those conversations and work together. Yeah.
Then in terms of added extra, we're definitely thinking outside the box. So got rooms to hire, and we're open to any sort of approach from any business that wants to come in and use the space in the facility. But we're also very much looking for partners to work with where we've got some mutual benefit for offering discounts on our membership and our access to our centres for discounts on their products or supplies. So that could be from a discount in Daisy's dance school that's held in the village hall. If they come and use our swim facilities, they get 10% off our swim. We will definitely be looking at those sorts of partnerships. And to me, they are the real partnerships that we should be talking about, not just giving a name to a partnership and sort of lip service to it. That's how we're going to survive. That's how the leisure centres are going to survive moving forward. They have to be seen to be community leisure centres, bringing all of those opportunities together. They really need to be the hub, and the only way to do that is to have those conversations really openly with your communities and be able to say, look, we can work together. There's a mutual benefit to this, all under the health and wellbeing agenda.
Are you saying that Jessica's dance class in the community centre, the people who go to that dance class might get 10% off a swim?
They could, if they were perhaps a member with us or a user with us, and they could prove that they were coming to the leisure centre, then they could get a discount off the dance school as well. It's how we would work together.
Okay, so Caspar?
Sorry, I was just going to, living just outside of Oakhampton, I'm obviously familiar with Parklands, and my son plays football and, nearby. It doesn't always seem overly welcoming. Not once you're in the building is lovely, but actually outside, obviously you've got the pay and display car park, which is pay and display, and it's more practical for those using Parklands, whereas there is the free one, but it's a trek, especially if it's somebody that's maybe using it from a health perspective where they've been referred. But you've got a lovely green area out the front and a nice sort of walk to the building. But there's nothing in the car park that actually says that you're there, and there's nothing that's welcoming to actually entice people to come in. I wonder whether perhaps that needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, the cafe will make a big difference to that. The smell of the coffee going out onto the green area at the front will make a huge difference. And I was there when it was launching, and it did make a massive difference. People that had never been in the leisure centre were just stopping and coming in what's going on, what are the balloons for, what's the display for. But your point about the car park and directing people out there is absolutely right. We do need to think about that. We've tended to concentrate on the initial problems that COVID caused us, which were all plant room related and recruitment related. We're now moving on to the marketing and the signage to get people in. But yeah, it's a really good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Southcott.
Yes, take you back to the marketing side. I'm involved with one particular parish where I do the newsletter that goes out to roughly 500 houses. I've never seen anything for leisure facilities in there, in the adverts. Likewise, there's nothing in the local village hall. I go to several village halls and there's nothing advertising your facilities. It's not something you're missing somewhere along the line?
Definitely sounds like we are, yeah. We are doing the outreach, so I'll make sure that Claire Bill and her colleague Karen Dent pick that up when they go out and do that, and we'll make sure that we get permission to put up our posters advertising our services. But yeah, that's exactly right. If that newsletter is the medium that everyone reads in your parish, then that's what we need to get involved in. And at the moment, we're just doing some blanket marketing that might be picked up, but might not.
Just as a point, the one that is produced in New Down, because that's where I am based, there's 500 paper copies currently, and something like 80 PDF versions that go out. Quite an open market.
Yeah, and that's exactly the opportunity that we're looking for, so really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a few questions from outside the committee, but we'll do the committee questions first. Councillor Vachon.
Thank you. More of an observation, actually, going back to the marketing side of things. Yeah, targeted marketing is the way to go, definitely. But we as members can actually be involved in all of this because we're representing all our communities. We know of all the groups that could use this sort of facility, I'm sure. So there's sort of two-way information here. There's information from us going to leisure centres, and they can be contacting these groups in return. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Renders.
Thank you, Chair. Very pleased to once again hear you address us. It was good, and it was really nice to know that you're in a very good place, as you put at the end, which is really positive. I was slightly confused in the middle, and it is a question related around that, because part of your presentation, as you were with regards to which you're positive about moving forward, what you can do for the future, we noticed that your levels of the numbers visiting now are on a par with pre-COVID, which again is a really good sign, isn't it? And you mentioned the fact that you were going to try and retain those numbers and get more from them to go forward. You then mentioned that you would then look into increase on top of those, and that's where I was thinking, well, which way are you going to go? And so what are you going to do to increase the numbers? And lastly, if you do increase and retain, one of the biggest downsides you had on there obviously was your staff recruitment and retention. So obviously you could end up shooting yourself in the foot a little bit, in that you'll get all these people coming in, and then suddenly we'll be having a meeting next time and you'll be saying, oh, we can't cope, and your graphs will be down even more. And then just as an aside, only because I did a little bit of research yesterday, and I asked, again, to try and build numbers, I asked my local school, and I'm very rural. Now I'm in Dartmoor ward, which covers Princetown, Hexworthy, right the way out that way, and of course we would have to travel into Tavistock. So my question to the school was, who are we using and why? And it turns out they use Kelly College. They hate it because it's freezing. And I said, great, well, why are you not using Meadowlands? And this is just for you. We tried, nobody ever got back to us. So there's a school there that might be an easy picking, but that's an aside to my original question. You know, obviously, you're going to cause yourself a bigger problem by doing what you're doing.
Now, when the pool shut for the 4 to 5 weeks, it was a little bit before my time, but from my own history and from the understanding, they lost a lot of the schools because it was in change of a term. So they just went and booked in with Kelly College. A lot of the schools signed themselves up to coach contracts, which were like 2 or 3 years, so they could travel to the school. And that's been the barrier getting them back. Since then, I've managed to gain back 4 schools so far, but I am working around the schools to try and fit them in the best we can, starting with the ones that are not on big coach contracts or travelling so far, to try and work outwards so they can walk to us, etc. But yeah, it's literally one of my biggest items on my list is to get the new schools in for September.
And the recruitment idea is really good concern to raise, but when we came back from COVID, we didn't have the rolling programme of training courses that we've got in place now. So we were starting from ground zero, no training courses in place. Now we've got a regime where we've got swimming teacher training courses, lifeguard training courses, and training courses for our frontline staff in place. So there's a funnel of people coming through the doors that we can train up and use for our recruitment moving forward as the services and programmes grow. So we're in a much better place.
So you're not as concerned as it made out on the thing. I was just picking up on.
There's always pinch points. So if, for instance, you've recruited 3 16-year-old lifeguards, they will either stay for 2 years and leave at 18, or they will leave after 4 years and leave at 20. But if they all leave at once at a similar time, we've got to find 4 lifeguards all at once. That's when it becomes a little bit difficult. I'm not totally sure we'd be able to cope with that, but I'm more confident than I was a year ago.
You made reference to it in the presentation that a lot of it's the fact that obviously it's, and I own a shop, and I know the problems with recruiting when you're a minimum wage payer as well, which does cause problems, isn't it? But yours is a lot more specialist than mine is. I just wondered whether or not.
Yeah, well, we've also
offered,
we've upped our retention package for our employees. So instead of them receiving free access to the centre when they become contracted with us, it's now free access for them and their families. So that's a huge incentive for them to come in and use the centres and stay with us for a bit longer. It's also true to say, and refer back to the MVQ training process, they can come to us on an apprenticeship basis and learn their level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and work their way through, similar to what Simon's done with us. And that will help us to retain the good people that we've got. And that's certainly made a massive difference. In fact, the three level 3 apprenticeships that we've got have been with us now for 4 years. And they're all looking to go on to the next step. And it's something I'm really proud of, actually. It's a really strong process with us. But we've got to remember we're in an area of net migration for the 16 to 20-year-olds, and that's the truth of it. They're moving out of the area, they're not moving into the area. So I'm wise to that, and we've just got to put in those mitigation measures. But exciting challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor West?
Thank you for the presentation. I was interested to look at your numbers and figures coming through. You mentioned in your presentation about how you were in the cafe and you had people from Liverpool and etc., etc. However, I know, which is a good thing, it's good to see, but obviously you talked about the numbers coming through the door. You obviously are dealing with a seasonal situation as it's half-term week, visitors, that sort of thing. How do you manage that, and how are they reflected in the figures that you've given us?
Well, they'd be a straightforward account. As a single person would be a single participation number increase. So when we review the figures monthly with John, we will talk about 3 weeks of normal pattern and 1 week of holiday period. 12 holiday weeks in a year. So John and I will know that we'd expect to see a footfall increase in this week, but then a return to the base level. And it's the base level that Simon and I are tasked to increase on a day-by-day basis, so it gradually moves up in accordance with our recruitment, as we've just said.
And I'm assuming that's reflected in your figures that we've seen. That is a reflection of the base level, if you like, the 3 week rather than 4 week. That's not all the figures together. In other words, you've stripped out some of the seasonal data within that?
No, that's the total figure for the centre.
So that increase then, some of that is based on seasonal?
Yes, it will be, yeah.
So there is a risk there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As there is no reflection, because we haven't got the schools back, but with the schools returning, we'll see their numbers in the annual figures next year. So the schools will count for 30 pupils per class. So the participation figures will reflect those numbers next year as well.
So off the top of your head, and I appreciate this is off the top of your head, what percentage of the total figures do you feel are reflective of a seasonal impact? 5, 10%, something like that fluctuation?
12 weeks, 52 weeks. A bit more, 15?
15%.
15.
Thank you.
Councillor Daniel, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. I always welcomed every year to see how you're doing. And my question was just, you were mentioning you'd like to become a community leisure centre and embed yourself more into the community. And had you thought about widening your remit so that you included adult education, arts and creativity, because they also enhance people's well-being and sense of community and might entice them to use other facilities there, and whether that, I see you have a room to hire, and whether you could reach out to local communities to say, look, hold your group here, we'd welcome these types of activity to be more inclusive in the community. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly the route that we want to go down. So if you've got any advice on how we do that successfully, any contact points, then please let us have them, because that's exactly the sort of clubs and groups that we need to work with.
I think parish councils are quite a good route, and as someone was saying, parish notice boards or village hall notice boards, that they would offer people an alternative to trying to rent local premises.
Yeah, and certainly diversifying into the art and culture sort of elements would really open the doors in terms of a community site, and I'm more than welcome to discuss that. More than welcome. Thank you.
Councillor West.
Sorry, me again. I've still got this thing about these seasonal figures. One thing we're trying to do with the car park within Tavistock is reflect the need of locals within that, to reflect in terms of our pricing strategy. And unfortunately, with you being where you are, that's one of the main car parks where we encourage visitors to go, etc. Have you in mind, is it possible to even look at the fact that unfortunately our visitors need to pay an extra premium for visiting Meadowlands, which with them in the pool and that, which is great, but it does have an impact on locals. They may well tend to stay clear of Meadowlands during the holiday periods because they know they're going to have a local influx. So I'm wondering in terms of pricing structure whether there's some way of reflecting that.
Well, that's quite interesting, because I had that conversation with Simon only this morning. I don't have the answer to that right now, but that is definitely in our thought process to try and consider how we manage the provision for locals. Because Simon was telling me this morning, the sessions this morning were family swims. The locals will come to the wet and wild swims, whereas if you come on holiday, you might not know the difference, but the locals certainly know the difference between a wet and wild session and a family session.
I'm just wondering if some sort of loyalty card, long-term loyalty card or something like that provides a discount for locals may be a way forward there.
Well, with the swim school memberships and the family memberships, we do give all family swims, etc., for free with those memberships. So by what we do, we make sure that during that holiday period, we're giving enough free swims for those demographics to come so they can bring their children with their parents during the swim school memberships and use the sessions for free. But then obviously sticking the more pricier but more expensive sessions, wet and wild sessions on, which then draw in all the tourists. So we're trying to hit both markets while making sure we're still delivering to our swim school members, etc., and giving them free sessions.
Thank you.
I'd like just to go back briefly. You mentioned about apprenticeships. How often do you take on and do that role? Because I noticed from your website you make no mention of it on your as any current vacancies. And I'm just wondering, you know, I know that West Devon Borough, you know, we're keen to work with companies and have apprenticeships, but there doesn't seem to be anything listed on your website.
So we use CSL as our main apprenticeship provider, and basically where they're at the moment with the developer on the apprenticeships is trying to do it in-house for the in-house staffing, because it was all stopped with COVID and all that. Is try and get all the in-house staff re-enrolled, and then they're going to start doing it outsourcing again. I'm currently in a conversation with our lead of development with Fusion, Tanya, about how we're going to outsource apprenticeships, bring apprenticeships in straight from school so they don't need to go to college and stay in the education system. And it is on our radar for 2024. She hasn't told me when we're going to be allowed to start doing it. But at the moment, it's literally getting the retention better in the leisure centres in Fusion by getting our own people on the courses, training and development with us, sorts our recruitment issue out to a degree because of the retention that we're doing, but also then we'll start recruiting and from the outside again.
I think we're at an hour now, which is probably enough time. Any final question or not? Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the informative report. We have a recommendation. I did think about that a second ago. So the recommendation is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the contents and progress of Fusion's annual report for 2023 and proposals for 2024. And I wondered if we needed to add in a recommendation that we review the pricing and timings for the car park at Meadowlands. We could just avoid it, but I think we do need to tackle it. Yeah, Councillor Mann.
I was just going to say, yeah, I would support that.
Okay, are we right to add that as a second recommendation? Show of hands to say we agree with that? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a verbal report from Devon Building Control.
Hello.
Sorry, Nigel, I'm just working out what's happening here. Okay, Nigel, would you mind introducing the service and what you do? I think there's quite a few councillors here who won't have heard from Devon Building Control before. So
no, that's fine.
Useful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yes, good afternoon. I'm Nigel Hunt. I'm the current head of the Devon Building Control Partnership. I've been in post 3 years now. I've got 42 years experience in building control now. I was previously the manager of the Somerset Building Control Partnership. The main purpose of the partnership is to ensure that building control functions for Teignbridge District Council, South Hams District Council and West Devon Borough Council can meet the statutory and regulatory duties in respect to building control matters. Now, building control are responsible for ensuring that the legislation associated to all buildings actually complies with the relevant legislation and regulations. So that could be somebody putting in a new WC and internal alterations, right up to things like Emirates Stadium and buildings like that. So basically, a building control surveyor needs to have knowledge and experience of all types of construction, and how to apply the regulations for those. Our partnership is a joint committee model. We operate under a partnership agreement, which is governed by a board, which is made up of elected members from all the constituent councils. Both operationally and strategically, I report to the committee, but the actual staff and the support services are all run by Teignbridge District Council. Part of the service, operating under SIPFA guidelines, the building control service needs to, over a rolling period, needs to be what we call self-financed, and break even. Currently, what we have to do is cover up, at the moment, I think the costing is around about 84% is through fee income. So we have two elements, which is described as fee earning and non-fee earning. The building regulation aspect of the service is income generating and operates in accordance with the guidelines I mentioned before. The fee earning part of the service operates by charging for building regulation applications. Within that, we are in competition, and I will talk about that a little bit later. The non-fee earning part of the service is funded by the council taxpayer and includes us working on dangerous structures, enforcement, demolitions, supporting safety advisory groups within the 3 councils, and operating as a consultancy service to other council departments. We are a statutory service, which means that as local authority, you have to offer our service. And as I said to you, we administer legislation relating to the built environment, and we operate in such a manner to establish and maintain a high reputation for both it and the partner councils. Now, I don't know if there's any questions on the first part, as that's quite long.
Just check in the room. Any questions? No, if you'd like to carry on, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So we have a strategy map for our service delivery. So this underpins everything that we do. We try to determine the building regulation applications and carry out site inspections within our set timescales. We try to promote the creation of a healthy, safe and accessible built environment for the well-being of customers and the wider community. We try to provide a high quality, effective, efficient and customer focused building control partnership. We try to maintain an effective and well-trained workforce within a commercially minded approach. The partnership services are used by a large proportion of all the applications serviced within the geographical area. Now, currently, our market share operates at around about 85–87%. That is higher than the national average by about 18%. Next slide, please. So the way we operate, currently each constituent council pays for the non-fee in proportion of the overall costs, which amounts to approximately 19%. So that 19% of our operating costs is split across the councils. There is a slight differential within that because of the nature of the 3 councils. So it is based on the number of applications that authority receives each year, and therefore how much of that we need to service. Local authority building control is subject to competition for private sector building control bodies. We call them approved inspectors or AIs. They operate both regionally and nationally. This competitive scenario is applicable across all developments, including domestic extensions, new housing and commercial developments. This gives us all applicants a clear choice between local authority building control, LABC as we call it, and the private sector building control approved inspectors. Despite this choice, local authority retains a statutory duty to enforce the building regulations in its geographical area and is considered to be a service of last resort. Approved inspectors are not able to perform this function, and sites which cannot be signed off by an approved inspector by law need to revert to us for enforcement. Therefore, irrespective of any workload and income, all councils must retain a building control service at some cost to the authority. As I mentioned before, the partnership has maintained a market share, and over the last 3 years, it's been approximately 88%, which is far higher than the national average. I don't know if anybody's got any questions on that slide.
Can we just check? Any questions?
No. Okay. So what we use is to monitor our performance is something called Power BI. We're continually developing this because what we have to do is provide a number of figures and sort of reports back to government. So, for instance, here, what we look at is sort of applications received in the last financial year, which this actually shows the split percentage-wise. But we have something what we call a building notice. That's the majority of applications. That is used mainly for domestic alterations, extensions and things like that. That's the majority that we receive. With that, applicants do not need to deposit a plan or anything like that. They don't need to have an architect involved. They tend to be more resource heavy on site because obviously it may be homeowners undertaking the work and they need a bit more sort of input from the service. Full plans applications generally relate to new housing and all commercial and industrial applications. Initial notices are the approved inspector. Although they undertake the work, we have to register them. We have to actually sort of report the numbers. So that is something, again, there's a cost to through the non-fee earning portion. So that is paid by the constituent councils because we don't generate a fee from that. Regularisation applications are those where work has started without an application. And then we have something called partner applications where we work under an agreement with a building control provider from outside the area. So there's a fluctuation, as you can see, within the number of applications, and that is seasonal. And then, for instance, on the right-hand side of the slide, it sees the number of full applications which are checked within 15 days. Now, the national guidelines for that is 60%. So we're achieving 92% now. And if we can move to the next slide. So again, what we look at is how we register applications. So national guideline on the first one is 85%. We set a target of 99. We did drop slightly below that. The completions in 7 days, that is for us to act on a request for a completion inspection, carry out the inspection and issue a certificate within 7 days. Our target for that is 85 and we're achieving nearly 98. Actions will determine within 15 days. That is to do with an application that has come in and we need to either act with regard to checking a plan or providing with further information. Our target is 85%, but we're achieving 92%. So in our key performance indicators, we are actually achieving the majority of those. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So part of this report really is to sort of report on what's been happening. But 2023 has been a challenging year for the partnership. Following on from the royal assent being granted for the Building Safety Bill, new legislation known as the Building Safety Act 2022 came into force. This also led to the establishment of the Building Safety Regulator in England, which is now part of the Health and Safety Executive. This now has a responsibility for regulating high-risk buildings, raising the safety standards of all buildings, and help professionals in design, construction and building control to improve competence. There has been a whole raft of new secondary legislation under the new Building Act, which has changed the roles and responsibilities of building control and its customers. These major changes are that all building control bodies, both public and private sector, will be overseen by the Building Safety Regulator, which will audit building control teams and their managers. The Building Safety Regulator will have the power to investigate and sanction building control teams, including financial penalties, suspensions, special measures for teams and individuals. And in certain circumstances, this could lead to criminal charges and possible imprisonment. These are all new roles and responsibilities and sanctions that have come under the new Act. If we can move on to the next slide in support of that, please. There's also extensive new powers relating to enforcement, including stop notices and substantial fines. Increasing the timescales for enforcement action either by or on building control from 12 months to 15 years. This will have a major impact on, with regard to us taking enforcement or somebody challenging a decision that building control has made. Part 3 of the Building Safety Act, which came into force on the 20th of October 2023, applies to all buildings. and there are two sections within that which aim to increase and improve building safety. The first introduces accountability for ensuring that building regulations are adhered to, so that buildings will be safe by introducing a duty holder regime, not unlike that which applies in respect of health and safety during construction. The second aims to increase industry competence on part of those duty holders and reflects Parliament's desire for a change in attitudes to responsibility for delivering buildings that will meet new regulatory requirements post-Grenfell. If I could move on to the next slide, please. So, in addition, all building control professionals will have to register with the building safety regulator, not just those working on high-rise or high-risk buildings. Any restricted activity from expecting plans to site inspections will have to be conducted by a registered professional who will be known as a registered building inspector. That means that all of our current surveyors, irrespective of their previous qualifications,
Oh, you'd think you'd... we've lost connection with you. You might not know that.
Only one more slide.
I guess Steve's looking at it.
In Southam, something similar happened where he basically lost connection just before he started, so we couldn't get him back into the meeting.
Should we just take a break for a few minutes? Can we do that? We can do a 3-minute break, can't we? 5-minute break?
We can do a break. It's you're the chairman.
Yes? Let's have a 5-minute break.
Are you back, Nigel?
Hello, Nigel.
Hello, I'm back.
Sorry to lose you. We've just taken a 5-minute break, so just wait for everybody to come back again.
Yeah, okay, certainly, thank you. Sorry about that. They're living in Torquay.
Yeah, unreliable broadband.
Yes.
Nigel, we're just trying to get everybody back, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Did you realise you were disconnected?
I did when I looked up and I realised it's frozen. I don't know how far I got into this slide.
Yeah, I think you were down to the first.
Okay.
We were at the formal training. You were about to say.
Right. Okay.
They're coming back. We're not quite ready.
Okay. Don't worry.
Are we ready to get started again? Shagford's a long way away. I'm not surprised it's taking them a while to get back.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, if you'd like to carry on, Nigel, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So yes, I mean the process that we're going through now is that the surveyors have been undertaking training. They've submitted their evidence. Majority have sat the examinations, and we have had some results back. Unfortunately, some haven't passed and have been deferred, and we have some more taking exams in February. We are currently better placed than any other authority in the Southwest with regard to surveyors going through the process. And we're far better placed than a lot nationally as well. If we can move on to the next slide now, please. Thank you. However, unfortunately, 2023, or this financial year, has seen a downturn in application numbers and therefore income. This is due to the financial uncertainty generally and rising costs within the construction industry. Currently, we're approximately 19% below the previous 4 years' average, which means it's likely that we may have to utilise what we call earmarked reserves. Now, the way that our finances work is that we receive monies for applications. We need to have that money within a reserve account because we will have to service the majority of those jobs outside of the financial year in which we receive the fees. So we have an ongoing reserve account. Within that is some earmarked reserves which allow us to facilitate a drawdown for such reasons as recession, etc. Now, those reserves are finite, so it's likely that we will be able to function as we are for probably 2 financial years. However, part of my role is to look at where we can make savings and actually sort of rationalise the way that we work. Market share within that, though, still remains higher than the national average, and we're around about 83%, with all key performance indicators being achieved, generally speaking. I'd say key performance indicators are the ones that are set by government. We have our own internal ones. They're the ones that we've dropped slightly. Staff retention and recruitment remains an issue in gaining experienced and qualified staff, both regionally and nationally. This is going to increase with a considerable number of staff within the profession who are 55 or over retiring as they do not want to go through the process of proving competency as mentioned previously. We also had the sad passing of one of our surveyors who'd been with us for over 20 years. That's really a brief overview of where we are. I mean, we do have joint committee meetings where you have elected members that can report back on a regular basis, and Drew Powell and myself and the director at Timoth, we meet regularly to talk through the issue sort of on an interim basis. So I don't know if there's any questions now arising from the slides.
A question from Councillor Vashon.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. You referred to an earlier slide on regulating high-risk buildings. I'm just wondering, what is the definition of a high-risk building and who decides whether it is a high-risk building or not?
Okay. I mean, basically, at the moment, the main high-risk buildings are those over a certain height and those that are considered a risk with regarding sleeping accommodation, etc. So that would be hospitals. So we, as a partnership, have to have surveyors trained to what they call level 6, which is fire safety specialist level, because we have one building. We have one building in Teambridge, which is a half a metre over the 17-metre height. That's classed as a high-rise, high-risk building. That is going to change in the next couple of years because this initial raft of legislation is being brought in to hopefully negate anything happening like Grenfell again. But what will happen, and the way that the industry is changing, is that they're looking at a whole number of buildings that will come in as high risk, and they will include hotels, they will include schools, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you very much for your report. I just noted this increase in oversight that you're going to have, and already you're sort of talking about going into earmarked reserves. Within the industry, what is the opinion of the effect of that legislation on your job and on the cost of building control for people out there trying to do work?
Okay. I would say this is the biggest change within the building control industry and construction industry in definitely my whole career, 40 odd years. If I'm frank, I would say that it's been rushed. It's been poorly thought through. We are in a situation where I have surveyors who have got 30, 40 years experience, who are having to go through this process. And I mean, it's alien to them, and to prove their competency now, the age some of them are with the experience they've got, is an issue. Some of them, unfortunately, have taken the exam and have not passed, so they've been deferred and they've got to take those exams again. We are going to have an issue, I think, with bringing people into the industry, into building control, because the onus now, with regard to the possibility of being taken to court, will restrict people coming, especially with the salaries we pay. We've also got issues with regard to the fact that the way that the regulations have changed, the roles and responsibilities, is that in reality, building control surveyors will no longer be able to offer advice. So, for instance, you will have possibly a small single-storey extension which is being built by a homeowner to save money. If we go on site and they haven't got sufficient insulation, under the new legislation, we cannot tell them what they need to do. We are just there to oversee and issue a certificate if the work's complete to satisfy the regulations. So it's complete turnaround of the profession, and the reason why most of us do it is because we like going out, we like talking to people, we like resolving issues, we like to see a satisfactory resolution to an application and supporting people. That is changing.
Okay. Do you want to do a follow-up?
Yeah, just on a follow-up, is there any industry lobbying that's happening around these topics? Because it sounds like it's quite important and it's going to have a huge effect on building control as a whole and also on that profession.
Yes, there's a lot of lobbying that has gone on. It's fallen on deaf ears, unfortunately. This week, though, the head of the LABC, the organisation, Local Authority Building Control, has written to government, to DLUC, to the regulator, to the LGA, expressing the concerns over the stress this is causing, over the fact that on April the 6th, when this is supposed to be coming into force, we are likely as a country to have less than 20% of either local authority or private building control surveyors registered and licensed to carry out the role. So we are asking for it to be deferred, a period of grace, so that we can sort of get control of this, but everything's been rushed through. I mean, we had a notification in September last year of a change in how applications needed to be submitted and registered, and we had a month to try and adapt applications and our online registration to garner extra information which we'd never been asked for before, and we've never asked our customers before. There's a lot of lobbying going on. Unfortunately, it's falling on deaf ears at the moment. I mean, I would say that morale in building control is the lowest I've ever seen it. And I fear that I'm going to have possibly 3 surveyors who will either resign, or if the legislation carries on as it should, will not be qualified by that April deadline and in effect will be terminating their contract.
Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm somebody who used Devon Building Control last year for a small extension I had, and I must say I was incredibly impressed, and that takes quite a lot of doing, with the service. With the service that they provided. It was exemplary, from the telephone calls and the fact that the inspector would turn up the next day. It was just incredible. So that was great. I'm just a bit concerned about those who don't achieve the building regulation inspector status. Is there any extra help that you can give to those people to try and get them across the line?
We've done more than any other authority that I know. We've been providing training sessions for them every Thursday for over 9 months. I don't necessarily think that the exams are written in a way that's helpful. They're online. I mean, we've got one member of staff who, and we've appealed on her behalf. She's submitted an appeal herself because, bizarrely, like myself this afternoon, her internet went down for an hour in the middle of the exam. And currently, they're not taking that as a reason to appeal. They're just saying resit the exam. So, yes, it's.
Oh, sorry.
No, just saying it. You know, we're not. It's not a good place to be at the moment, unfortunately.
I think the word unsustainable comes to mind here in a big way, which tends to reflect a lot of what's coming out from our current government. My concern really is around what you said, Nigel, about market share. And I'm wondering, and this is not to take away from you or the members working for you, is the fact that we've got a bigger than market share more a reflection of the fact that we haven't got the large private companies prepared to come down here and work because of the size of population and housing, that sort of thing, which is not to discredit what you're doing, but I do wonder the sort of idea behind this, and I have great concern that inevitably the taxpayer ends up picking up the loose ends, the buildings that the private sector don't want to touch, or the problems that there are. And I'll reflect Anne's comment. I'm very concerned if you're not able to say to somebody, okay, insulation's not a good thing, but if we're talking about a sewerage pipe that hasn't been put in properly, or electricity that hasn't been put in properly, I know there's regs around that, then it just seems a total recipe for disaster.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, I mean, what will happen is that the surveyor will go on site and indicate what doesn't comply, and then you just have to say to somebody, you have to go away and research that and come up with a solution and call us back again. What this is pushing towards is that all construction, irrespective of size, will need to be placed with a competent agent or architect or engineer. So we're sort of a free hit, really, building control. We're the first ones to be legislated in this way. What will happen is that architects and designers in time will have to go through the same sort of process. And I think it's just a view that they're trying to tighten up regulations and the way they're applied. The problem with that is that we've always worked on what we call soft enforcement, which is we'll go out, we'll have a chat and say to an individual, you know, your drains aren't laid to the right fall, etc. You know, you need to do this, put a bit more sand underneath there or something like that. Call us back when you've done that. That's how we've always worked in the past. What they're saying at the moment, and we're still lobbying against this, is that a surveyor puts himself at risk of giving advice which may come back in time as an enforcement issue. So that's where we're at with that. With regard to the other question, our market share is based on the fact that we are predominantly a rural partnership. So most house building or volume house building has always been with the private sector, so the NHBC. We lost that a long time ago. So my fear is that under this new legislation, pretty much the private providers have been told that they will no longer be able to work on high-risk, high-rise buildings going forward, which for a profession, for local authority, is a good thing. But if you haven't got those sort of buildings, it doesn't make any difference. But the private providers will now say, if we can't target those to make us more viable, they're going to come and target our small domestic markets. So that's the fear.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much. I think we need to move on to the next agenda item. Mr. Powell?
Thanks, Chair. If I can just, a bit of context for West Devon. See, Nigel's spoken about the partnership as a whole, but just from our perspective, just so you understand the governance arrangements, Councillor Southcott and Cheadle are on the committee, along with 2 members from South Hams and 2 members from Teambridge. And as Nigel said, the actual partnership is hosted by Teambridge, which is why you don't see so much about it and you don't see the staffing challenges and issues. But the challenges are very similar to the ones we have in planning and in the legal department. Those professional officers are very, very difficult to find now. The challenge that Nigel's laid out there in terms of these new requirements is a very real one. The committee that Councillor Southcott and Cheadle sit on will be looking at the financial position at the next meeting, and there's some real challenges there, which might involve having to put fees up, look at the size of the workforce. Applications are down at the moment in the same way as the value of applications in planning are down, and that reflects the housing market to a point. So really just, that's the context for members here. I think it's been really helpful that Nigel's laid out what the service does, and it's very good to hear that we've had a good experience of one of the members as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Nigel, do you want to say anything to finish off?
No, I do think that possibly, I mean, I've had a couple of discussions with Drew, and I think probably this is a good forum if you sort of have an overview, but I'm more than happy to sort of facilitate some other meetings if members would like sort of a greater sort of review of what we do and how we do things. As I say, we've got a lot of challenges in the next couple of months. I'm hopeful that the deadline will be put back. As a profession, we need that to be done. But as I say, I'm quite happy if people want to discuss with Drew, and I can facilitate another meeting, maybe in person next time, just to go through things in more detail, really.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now we're moving on to the Community Safety Partnership. I think Councillor Ewings will be introducing this.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, everybody. I wish I could talk as fast as Rebecca now, I really do. Just can't do it, it's an art form. This is the annual review that comes to the ONS committee every year. I'm just going to highlight some points of what the Community Safety Partnership does, and if we could support the priority setting process. So one of the first things that I would sort of say is, if we go to 2.4, about the Community Safety Partnership chairperson is Rebecca Hewitt, who happens to be the manager for Teambridge Council of Community Safety. And I was also going to say that within our resources, so 2.7, we have Rebecca, who's employed by Teambridge. Then we have a community service officer, Claire, who is sat beside me. And we had an antisocial behaviour officer that works across West Devon and South Hams, who retired not long ago. But Rochelle Underwood, who I know some members here really rate the lady, that she has transferred internally into the post. They also have an antisocial behaviour officer over in Teambridge, Gary Wilson, but he does 1 day a week across all 3 partnerships, particularly focusing on domestic violence and the community protection warnings that can be escalated to community protection notices. Funding, going back a bit, is no longer allocated to the community safety partnerships. It used to be, when I was chair of it a long time ago, that we just got money from government. We now actually have to formally bid to the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for specific projects that meet their qualifying criteria. So, you know, some authorities in Devon haven't received any money at all this year. We have been allocated our 27,000 to support the Let's Talk projects, which I'll come on to a bit more in a minute. Under 2.13, the partnership will also need to have regard to the Preventing Serious Violence strategy that outlines Safer Devon's framework for preventing and reducing serious violence in Devon. We as a council, I put my name to it a couple of weeks ago, we have signed up to it, and I think nearly every council in Devon has signed up. All of them have now signed up. This is the strategy that is available on the Devon County website, and the Safer Devon partnership stands above the Community Safety Partnership. So at Community Safety Partnership meetings, for example, we tend to get 2 or 3 inspectors. We tend to be one inspector that covers the whole of West Devon, and then we go into somebody else's just a little bit, don't we? So we have 1 and a bit inspectors that cover our area. So the Safer Devon is, for example, all the superintendents in Devon. So, you know, it's another level higher, and the cabinet member for communities at council, at the county council level. And Rebecca sits on that partnership board. On the priority setting on item 3, we do have a day, and I've just gone past it in something else I've done, that is coming up that's being held. And this is where we look at specific projects. Now, if anybody here has any projects for their area, ward, or whatever, if you would like to submit them to Claire, so using her West Devon email address, so you only need to put in Claire in the top and it'll come up with her for you. You can then submit your project, but I would caveat it with a warning. There are a lot of projects that come forward and they need funding, and we don't have a lot of pennies. So just be realistic about what you're asking for, and not desperately upset if you don't get it. But sometimes some of the ones you don't expect to do well, because we have to do it on a point scoring basis, and we do look at the projects really in depth. So one that you think on the surface may not get anywhere actually can resonate with a lot of people, and it will do well, because all the partnerships for the community safety are there. So people from education, social services, the police, youth justice. So there's a very mixed bunch of us that turn up to this meeting, and that's why a project that you think is police-led actually may not do as well. But if you put something that's educational young people led, it may do better than you think. There's section 4, we're trying to get the Community Safety Partnership recognised much more up in the local government association, as I sit on the Safer, Stronger board, and they were looking at community safety partnerships as a whole, what use they provide to communities and of what benefit. I asked Rebecca if she would write just a couple of pages, not a formal report, and that has been taken up there, and we are going to go for, if they want, a more in-depth report of the work that can be done by a community safety partnership. The 5.2, there's an annual forum each year where the Community Safety Partnership celebrates and raises awareness of the best projects. We used to get over 100 attendees at that event. It is a really good event, if none of you have ever been. This will be the first time it's been an in-person event for 4 years, but I was insistent that I wanted West Devon to hold it and for you all to be able to come along. So it's Wednesday, the 27th of March, and I've got a time for it somewhere. Claire did give it to me.
9, I think, off the top of my head.
And there is a lunch.
Yeah, 9 a.m.
Yes. have your incentive. So that's there. So please, everybody, I would really implore you to try and come, and other members of your groups, if you could mention to them, and I will ask it to go on the comms list that we get every week. The Community Safety Partnership is introducing something new this year, that they're going to write articles to members' briefings. So when we get our list every week of our member bulletin, it won't be every week, but there will be items on there from the Community Safety Partnership. It may be a case that's gone well, not gone well, or ASB or something like that in the community that they can relay to us. So just so we get a broad brush of what the partnership does. We also chair multi-agency meetings with our partners to deliver, and this is 6C, sorry, to deliver against local identified issues in our communities. You can alert Claire to any of these issues, or Rochelle Underwood, of specific interests in your ward that we can look at. Some of these multi-agency events, like the one that was held in Lifton that Councillor Edmonds shared with us, can be some of these agencies getting together, and they don't need the finance as such because it's a day-to-day job, but they're actually all going to hit, for example, as they did here, an area of Lifton. So if you've got an area of concern within your wards, we can bring in some of the people, particularly if it's social housing, so the landlord would be there from whichever social housing it is, the police are there, we're there with our locality officers and the antisocial behaviour officers, and we can do pretty much a clean sweep of an area. So that would always just go to Claire, and if you could give her a broad outline of what your issues are, that we could then get in contact with you to arrange one of these. They usually do a morning or afternoon, but just to arrange for it to come to your area, to knock on some people's doors, you know, if you've got rubbish strewn all over a front garden and things like that, because it actually goes against some of the contracts that you sign for social housing, etc. So there's a lot that can be done within this. So please use it. Just on 6F, it just has here, firstly, by discussion with the joint, with the lead member. That is me. So if you've got an opportunity to contribute to the priority setting process, could you also just copy me in when you do it, please, so I can fight your case when we get there? That's all on there, and then I was just going to go through quite quickly the appendices, which is our local delivery plan for 23-24. We have a duty for domestic homicide reviews, which I have to say, I've only been involved in one of them, and it was pretty harrowing. It was an Oakhampton one. It went all the way through the press and everything else when it went to court. And I have to say, I followed it every day as it went through court because I'd been so involved. As you can imagine, for such a process, they are very heavy on time, and our officers having to put that time in to write the reports and give evidence as we go through. When a domestic homicide review first came out, they were about somebody who had died through what looked like domestic violence, and that would be the police's first clue. They would then ring Rebecca and let her know, and she would then have a duty to let the Community Safety Partnership chairman know. From there, you get the details of what's happened, and what it used to be is, has that person reached out to any other organisation? Have they gone to a DV organisation? Have they ever gone to the police before? Have they ever gone to social services if children have been involved? And it's a collective of looking at the circle around that person and where did they go. And in a lot of the cases for these, they don't go anywhere. Nobody has ever known. You get the odd one, and I think one you're dealing with at the moment, isn't it, is where they have been to an agency. And it then, you know, we just look into it a bit more from there. Sadly for us, this now includes suicides, and I don't know whether you know, but unfortunately, West Devon has the highest rate of suicide at the moment between the 3 councils. A lot of them have actually been young men recently in Tavistock, which is very sad, but they now come under the domestic homicide reviews. So that's made that pile of work even higher. So it is very labour intensive. The next sort of report, where have we got? There is the one on page 8 of the appendices, the first top one, channel and police-led meetings. We have a case at the moment of a 13-year-old who, you know, it's a case of, is this person going to be radicalised? And actually the young person that the partnership is currently dealing with the police, is actually radicalised. It's how to take them out of it. They're not in danger of going into it. They're already there. So that is a huge thing for the partnership to have to deal with, and with young people. The other one I was going to talk about is what I talk about to you all the time when it comes to young people, is page 9, and that's our Let's Talk programmes. The Let's Talk Teenagers, Let's Talk Pre-Teens, Let's Talk Primary. The Let's Talk Primary is aimed at years 5 and 6, so they'll be coming forward for transition into their secondary education. We've now had a programme that's Let's Talk Growing Up in a Porn Culture. That is actually delivered by an American company because we couldn't get anybody in England to do it. But we all know young people using their phones and taking inappropriate photographs, etc., and then somebody else will put it up for the whole wide world to see. You know, that is quite endemic in some areas of society. We're also developing a Let's Talk neurodiverse programme and SEND. So that will be coming forward. And the one that I'm really excited about is Let's Talk Dads, because I think it's a lot of ladies will go on these calls. You don't tend to get the dads. And we're really keen to reach out to dads out there who could be experiencing, you know, some of these issues that they can't speak to their young child, person, young adult. And it will be about helping around that. And from there, you know, we can tell them there are these other programmes. An interactive website is also being developed for it. And the Community Safety Partnership have a YouTube channel for all of these Let's Talk sessions. They have been hugely successful. From my other report, that it's not on here, there's been over 6,500 people have gone through these Let's Talk programmes. Now, when you think that's only aimed at, well, actually, it's gone a bit further. We've had people in Australia, haven't we?
All over the world.
All over the world, people coming in for these talks. They have been very, very successful. I've actually had a doctor's surgery ask me yesterday if I can get them to come along and whether we go to them and help them with the programme. But a lot of people are coming forward for it. Our Police Crime Commissioner would desperately like to have it, but it's staying with us for the moment. Sorry, that was a message for Andy, which I forgot to give him. The violence, why did I highlight that? That was for me, wasn't it? The violence prevention and violence against women and girls there is a subgroup, and we are really starting to work with that, and they've got a meeting next week, as that is something quite new. I'm really sorry, I'm looking at the clock as well. That is all from there that we would like to bring forward. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take a few for a few minutes, and then I'll pass them all to Claire. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, thank you very
there
much.
you are, Councillor Kimber.
Thank you. I see you're encouraging us to take part in the annual priority setting process, and you wanted us to copy you in on the priorities.
No date,
but, sorry?
There's no date.
No, but how do we engage with that?
So the priority setting meeting would be with ourselves and partners. So if you're feeding into us prior to the priority setting, I think it's at the beginning of March. If I remember rightly, it's a Wednesday, first week of March.
6th of March.
Thank you. So if you let me know if there are any particular priorities that you want us to be addressing in the next year, contact me, let me know, copy Councillor Ewins, that'd be fine.
So that might be antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
In the
Anything.
Yeah. So do we have any other questions, please? Sulaiman?
Thank you. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that this is an area where I fell a little out of my depth. So I had a couple of questions that just came out of the paperwork, so I understand them. One was, what is the peninsula that you're referring to? As in, is that a specific area?
So the peninsula would cover Devon, Torbay, Plymouth and Cornwall.
Right, okay. So the whole foot, okay. And then the second one was, you've mentioned that there's an exploitation prevention network. I didn't understand in the context of what kinds of exploitation that you were trying to address in there, and I just wondered if you could explain that.
It's a variety of exploitation, everything from sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation. It covers some of our anti-slavery work. It's about us putting together work across Devon in things like teaching people to recognise where exploitation is happening and what we can do to try and prevent it. And if we do recognise it's happening, teaching people where to go, how to report it, that kind of thing.
What I'd like to see, Claire, is more regular communication with members. So more articles in. So you look at the work programme and there's lots of stuff in there, but what I don't see happening is regular stuff coming into the members' bulletin, and I think that would be helpful.
Said that was in there. That's priority for this year. I did mention that one.
My intention is probably a quarterly update, if that's, unless there's something that I think you really need to be updated on straight away, but I'd be anticipating, I think Steve wants more like bi-monthly.
I have to say I'm with Steve on that one.
All right then.
I was actually thinking monthly, yeah. I was thinking, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but just a short update on a programme in a month or when there's a change. I think that would be really helpful.
It doesn't have to be very long either, does it? No. Councillor Mann?
The only other thing I noticed while I was looking at it, there was one action item that said that you were working with something called Phoenix Rising and Refuge for Pets, which both sounded very interesting projects in relation to domestic violence, I think it was. And I just wondered if you have a list of the partnerships that you have and who those organizations are, because actually knowing that those things exist from the perspective of doing some signposting and things would be quite useful for all of us, for our constituents to be able to post them in the right direction. And when it just, in a lot of the cases, all it says is our partners, and I just wondered if it could be like that and we could be introduced to each of those organizations or maybe just a little line about them.
I think that's a brilliant idea. It's not something that I have that I can just email out tomorrow, but it's something that I'll definitely get because I think that's a really good idea.
Councillor West.
If I could just make an advertisement for the 10 weekly meetings we have with the inspector on a Wednesday night. I've been to 2 or 3 now. There's always something to learn, and that is a direct opportunity to talk to the police, get their understanding, put forward your ideas and that. And so I can't remember the date off my head, Claire, sorry. I thought 10 weeks from 2 weeks ago, but I'm not going to try and find it in my diary, I can't. But I would highly recommend that to anybody. And it's in Oakhampton Police Station, isn't it, next one?
Yeah, the next one's in Oakhampton. I can resend out the invitation. All members should have received an invitation to it anyway.
I think it's understanding of what you can learn from those meetings. Sometimes we get told things by the police that they wouldn't tell us in any other setting. So they are very open and honest with us about events that have taken place in West Devon, but also almost, pretty much sometimes, almost the person. So they are extremely honest with us because they know that those meetings are like a closed meeting for the members who turned up, and that's why they are more of an in-person meeting. I think we did have the screen last time. We did. Yeah. Yes, that's it. You were the only one, weren't you, Terry? And it is really important for members to come because you will learn far more as to what is going on the ground in your local area than if you invited them to this meeting. They came to this meeting, it would be very closed because this meeting is being advertised. Any, man or his dog can come on and listen to this meeting. The other meetings is completely confidential. There are always 2 police officers there, and Claire is there, and who else is there?
We will also invite Rachel to future meetings.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Squire?
There are 2 new police inspectors about to start in this area. They're inspectors Nathan Walker and Matt Beards. They are at the moment under apprenticeship, so that we will be having one of those at some stage, but that's about taking over from Chris Conway.
And also on that note, for the Oakhampton area, for people who weren't present at the meeting, there are going to be 2 more PCSOs, which they've been trying to get for quite a few years. They thought they might only get 1, they're actually getting 2. So that will cover the Oakhampton half of the borough.
If I could just come in on that point, in terms of Oakhampton, the front inquiry office is also opening this Thursday, and that's an open invitation to anyone who wants to turn up to that.
Thank you.
We are also getting a new station in Tavistock, which I think has been formally announced, hasn't it, Alison? Yeah, but we don't exactly know where it's going to be at the moment, unless you found out in the end. It is going to be at the police station, which means anybody who wants to use it has pretty much got to go by car, which isn't the most helpful. But we are getting one back in Tavistock, and there are others being looked into in other towns in Devon.
Thank you. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. So we have a couple of recommendations, which you can read on the screen. So can we have a show of hands to see if we're happy with them? Thank you very much. So, task and finish group updates. Oh, I didn't say thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. Yeah, sorry we didn't give you very much time. Thank you.
Sorry, Patrick, the date's the 3rd of April for that next meeting in Oakhampton.
Yeah.
At 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Just for reference.
We're now looking at task and finish group updates. Councillor Vachon, have you got any thoughts about the Fusion task and finish group?
Not at this stage, Chair. I think it's probably ongoing that perhaps we might have another report half yearly as opposed to every annual one. Just a brief one perhaps with the managers.
I had some thoughts on that, Chair. Is one of the slides at the end of the pack was this is what we're going to do over the next 12 months. And I was thinking if there would be a really good use of having a task and finish group meet and go and see if, meet with Fusion and just go and see if the things that they said they were going to do, they are doing and report back to this committee. I just think it'd be a good way of holding them to account rather than just wait for their next update in 12 months' time. That was my suggestion.
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah, I like that suggestion. So we can communicate outside of this meeting, I think, on that. And we talked about a follow-up with a working group with South West Water, didn't we? Did we say 6 months?
No, Chair, we were talking about an actual working party. They offered that they were happy to work with a working party.
What did I just say?
You just said they come back after 6 months.
I know, I meant to meet with a working group after 6 months. So I was wondering if anybody was particularly interested in joining that working group, who's not already in it.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Have we got their names?
We're in it.
I don't know.
Chris. Jane. So got problems at autocomplete. Does anybody else want to join that group? We'll try and get something organised for 6 months' time, which is convenient for everybody. Is that all right? Any other thoughts on working groups? We will be looking at the work programme in a minute, and Live West will be joining us, won't they, at the next meeting?
We intend to invite them.
Yeah.
Yes, whether they choose to attend, but we will be inviting them, yes.
Yes. So I don't know if we want to set up a working group for that, or whether we want to hear them first and then think about what to do afterwards. I don't know if there's any thoughts on that. Councillor Mann?
I would think that you'd want to be prepared if they're going to come here. So I think we should do a working group for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Better the working group after their presentation, I think, so we know what sort of things we need to look at.
Well, we could do, yeah.
So all the casework almost that I've had in Chagford has been connected with Live West and people's concerns about housing. So I would agree, Councillor Mann, that it would be good in the same way that we did with South West Water, but maybe at a sort of smaller scale, that we pooled some experience between us and knew what questions we wanted to be asking. And also then that means we can say to them before they come, these are the things we'd really like to hear about, rather than just getting a sort of glossy presentation.
Their presentation is very glossy, so.
I was going to say, they are the
Councillor West, sorry.
Yeah, I'd just reflect that. I think a target and finish group would be good because we've got another house in Horrobridge now that they're now selling off because it's 3 square metres below the required amount, which seems absolutely ridiculous. And there needs to be some justification of that, I think.
We can certainly ask. So it sounds like we've got plenty of volunteers for that group. Do you want to put your name forward and I'll write you down? So Councillor Mann, Councillor Elliott, and Councillor West. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Councillor Johnson. So that's a really good start to that. So let me know if you're interested in joining that group. If you didn't put your hand up then. I think that's all for task and finish group updates. So we're now on to looking at the work programme.
Well, obviously, Chair, Community Safety Partnership is down, and obviously we've just done Community Safety Partnership. We have a update on waste and recycling contract, which Councillor Daniel will present. We've asked Live West, and the conversation that we had was that one of the areas was about the disposals, and the other one was it? I can't remember now. Remember, it was disposals was the one, and then the other area that certainly is a concern that we've been getting as officers is the void period from a tenant leaving and the amount of time it takes for Live West to refurbish, and then so they let it out and say you're moving in, and I've had experience of this with in my area where somebody then gets told you're getting that property, and it takes them 6 months to get in because of the time frame for the refurbishment. So we don't want the glossy Live West overall presentation, look what we do, this is how big we are. What we want is the specifics of how they're managing housing in our area.
Is that a suitable forum to talk about community housing schemes or not?
Could do.
I don't know whether it would distract from the points we want to really focus on.
Well, we need to see how long. I would say that if we do a task and finish group beforehand and have some pre-prepared areas and questions, then they're going to be here, I would have thought, easily an hour. So we've then got the Q3, we've got the KPI report. If we have waste and recycling performance as well, I was proposing that I think we'll struggle to get Devon County Council to talk about roads to the next meeting. If I'm honest, we struggle to get them to talk about anything, to be honest. But we can try, but I would suggest we might have to push that forward.
Yeah, I'd rather concentrate. Sorry, Councillor Mann?
I don't know if this is relevant, but I know Wildlife Wardens is on the to be scheduled, and the funding begins on the 1st of April for that post. And then I'd spoken to who is it that does the whole council plan, Neil Hawke.
Yeah.
And he said that the advertisement will have gone out in March. And I don't know if we would want to just check in either that meeting or the next meeting, because to be honest, it will be at the very beginning of its process, but it's only for a year. So if we captured it in the begin, we can find out whether or not that person's in post and maybe figure out whether it's been filled as a priority from the natural environment.
Can I suggest then, because one of the things that we will be doing is we need to put forward, I guess, a proposed work plan for the next council municipal year. And one of the things that we will be doing is bringing forward the council plan themes. So each overview and scrutiny committee will review one of the themes, of which climate change, wildlife warden will be in that. So we will be asking the lead member for each theme to come along and report on how they're going to deal with their actions or what progress they've made against those actions. So that will be a key element of each overview and scrutiny committee in the next year. So can I suggest we bring forward as one of the discussion items or one of the agenda items to the next meeting a proposed work programme for the next municipal year, because we've only got the one meeting in April. That's acceptable, Councillor Mann?
I think we should think about wildlife wardens though, because it only runs for a year, so we don't want to get to October and then look at it.
I just worry that if somebody only gets in post on the 1st of April, and if they get recruited that quickly, and then we invite them on the 23rd of April and say, what are you going to do? It's a little bit tough.
Let's talk about that outside the meeting. So, okay. Are we happy to defer Devon County Council? Because I realise that's quite a political thing. I think we should defer it, but you may feel otherwise. Councillor Johnson?
I think it's regrettable to defer it, but I think we need to. I think the likelihood of getting anybody to turn up is low, and shame really, but I think we've got other priorities that we need to
Elliot?
I'm just not sure how these things can work exactly, but it seems to me there's like two levels of things. So one is to have the whole hour with someone like Fusion that was really useful, but the other is just to have a little update, which we would find helpful as a committee and might then help us to frame what we want to ask in the future. So with the wildlife wardens, can we just sort of put it on the agenda that we want Neil Hawke or whoever the appropriate officer is just to update us on process and how many applicants we got. So there's that, which should only then take 3 or 4 minutes really. But then also with the Devon County Council, is there any way that we can ask them for some report in writing? Again, we're not actually asking them to appear in person, but we're showing that we're interested in it, and it's something that a lot of our constituencies are very concerned about. It wouldn't be as aggressive as a, yeah, it wouldn't be as aggressive as a freedom of information request, but it could be quite targeted. So it would be a friendly way, but saying, could you give us some updates on?
We certainly, we can ask, and we can see if they can come along, and just ask them to give a update as to where they're at. But they might not. If they can't come, we can ask for something written or so on. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have something in writing. Councillor Sefcott.
Through the HATOC committee, several members of the council asked me to put some questions to Devon County over potholes. It took me 3 months to get an answer, and I had to involve Councillor Samuels to actually get that answer, and it was a whitewash. They're not interested. They really just don't seem to want to communicate or get involved. But their system of pothole repairs is atrocious, absolutely atrocious. The quality just isn't there when they do repairs. Now, it's either a contractor issue or it's a Devon County procedure issue. You can't get any straight answers out of them. I've tried very hard.
I think it'd be worth trying again. I think a written request for that would be good.
A point of interest to Terry's comment. We had Councillor Saunders come to the Horribridge Parish Council about 6 weeks ago, and he assured the parish council that basically they have changed their way of doing potholes. I think they may have even appointed a different contractor as well, and that everything will be rosy and wonderful in the pothole thing. I would suggest that we give them plenty of notice that we want to see them. So if we say, right, we'll see you in June at the ONS, something like that, less chance for them to wriggle out.
Could I just clarify that comment, Councillor West? Did you say there will be roses growing in the potholes? Or in the...
Quite possibly in Horribridge, I can assure you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I reported 5 potholes in about 20 metres yesterday in my locality, so it'll be interesting to monitor how quickly they come out and mend them. I have tested them, that they are 30 centimetres deep and wide and 4 centimetres deep, and have a straight edge on them. So it'll be interesting to see how many of those they knock back.
I think we want to talk about potholes, but I think we're going to... I think we're going to have to defer that from the next meeting.
Maybe annual's not roses in that then. It's not quite deep enough for roses.
Councillor Mann.
I just wanted to second the idea that we give them plenty of time and notice, and that we do devote a good amount of time so that if they can come, we can actually really go into the depth of the issue.
I'm tempted to say we should have another working group for that, but I think we have plenty of work to do for now. So we're happy.
The working group could fix the puzzle.
Councillor Johnson.
I just think that we need to be clear on what we're asking them, and we also need to get an answer from them. There was a recent meeting that was planned between West Devon and Devon County, and I think Mandy had to cancel it because only one person was going to be able to attend. So they don't seem to want to communicate with us, which is just such a shame, and I don't understand why not. You know, they need to come out of County Hall and get down and see what's going on at grassroots level.
Could we not ask councillors, county councillors to come, i.e. Debo and Philip Saunders, to come and have a meeting with a view to our concerns around potholes?
Right. We've got 2 months between now and the next meeting. So we will ask them to come to talk about road maintenance. If they say no, they can't come, we will ask them for a written report. If they say no, we can't do one, we'll ask the county councillors who represent West Devon to come and give us an update.
Am I, Kathy? Good.
Very good. Are we all happy with that? Is there anything else we want to discuss on the work programme? Does anybody want to go home?
Yes. Can I just quickly...
reported that as well several times. You can't get, if you use the mobile app on your phone, you cannot get your location up.
You're also modern. We'll try and add that to the list. So thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you for the questions and your focus. Good to see you all. Thank you.